Former Vice President Aaron Burr arrived in Richmond, Virginia on March 26, 1807, to appear in trial for treason. The Burr conspiracy is a very complex episode of American history, and there's a lot to get into. But right now, we're just going to focus on one of Aaron Burr's attorneys, Luther Martin. The thing about Luther Martin is that he was at the Constitutional Convention in 1787, and well, funny enough, while he was there, he made a motion, but because there was objections to the motion, he withdrew it. Little did he know that this would have repercussions 20 years later at the Burr conspiracy trial. Blennerhassett Island, which is in now West Virginia, was within John Marshall's jurisdiction, so he presided over the case. This court case was full of all-stars because you have on the prosecution side, it included George Hayes, who was leading it. He was a district attorney of Virginia. Assisting him was William Wirt, future U.S. Attorney General under James Monroe, along with Lieutenant Governor Alexander McRae. On the defendant side had John Wickham, Edmund Randolph, who at the Constitutional Convention introduced the Virginia Plan, and he was later George Washington's Secretary of State and Attorney General. And also on the team was Charles Lee, who was President John Adams' Attorney General, along with Luther Martin, the subject of this video. John Randolph Roanoke was the foreman of the jury, so this trial was the legal drama of the time. Like, everybody wanted to attend and be a spectator of it. While John Wickham would marshal the case and argument for the defendant, John Wickham, he was the professional of the legal team for Aaron Burr versus Luther Martin, who was there basically just to spite Thomas Jefferson. Luther Martin even took this case free of charge to help his friend Aaron Burr, and Thomas Jefferson sent George Hayes to find any dirt he could possibly find on Luther Martin because Thomas Jefferson did call Luther Martin the unprincipled and impudent Federalist bulldog. Just like I'm sure he called this very capable Attorney General of Maryland, lawyer Brandy Bottle, whatever chance he got. Because during this Aaron Burr trial, there was a time when Luther Martin spoke for 14 hours over 2 days, supplied with law books and a pretty impressive supply of liquor. Future Supreme Court Chief Justice Roger B. Taney will say this about his former mentor, Luther Martin, because Roger B. Taney was once a junior partner of his. Also, while at the Constitutional Convention, Luther Martin, he would read from law books and books of philosophy while arguing the different amendments, even though all who were present were aware and were familiar with law because, well, most of them were attorneys, and so they knew English and civil law. Luther Martin, he was the image of a lawyer. Like, he would cite his sources, he brought receipts, like, he just had an answer for just about everything. So why did Luther Martin consider this trial so important besides someone attempted treason against the United States and therefore should be guilty? Quite honestly, the popular opinion was Aaron Burr, who was the former vice president of the United States. He tried to conquer Western lands that belonged to Spain and, like I said, commit treason against the United States. So an example should be made of him and his followers, not to jeopardize the United States' safety because, well, he could have started a war with Spain, which was a friendly country at the time. Luther Martin, however, said that this trial will answer the question of whether a citizen is safe from the government, which had the basis of motives to hunt him down. Luther Martin was relatively quiet at the beginning of the trial, just sitting back listening to different arguments and taking it all in. His first argument wasn't until when the prosecutor side, George Hay, refused the subpoena that Chief Justice John Marshall ordered Thomas Jefferson to appear in court and bring with him military documents that Aaron Burr said threatened his life and property, along with a letter from General James Wilkinson that Thomas Jefferson used in a congressional address earlier that year in January that suggested or revealed that Aaron Burr was guilty of treason. I'm gonna have to read from this because Bro talks a lot, like I've mentioned before. Luther Martin observed, "The president has undertaken to prejudge my client by declaring that of his guilt there can be no doubt. He has assumed the knowledge of the Supreme Being himself and pretended to search the heart of my highly respected friend. He has proclaimed him a traitor in the face of that country which has rewarded him. He has let slip the dogs of war, the hellhounds of persecution, to hunt down my friend. And would this president of the United States, who has raised all this absurd clamor, pretend to keep back the papers which are wanted for this trial, where life itself is at stake? It is a sacred principle that in all such cases the accused has the right to all the evidence which is necessary for his defense, and whoever withholds willfully information that would save the life of a person charged with a capital offense is substantially a murderer, and so recorded in the register of heaven. It may be suggested that this is a private and confidential letter from General Wilkinson to the president. It was so said indeed yesterday. What, sir, if General Wilkinson had reposed as much confidence, if he had instilled as much poison into the ear of the president as Satan himself breathed into the ear of Eve, the president would have been still responsible to the court of justice and bound to disclose his communications." President Thomas Jefferson claimed that he couldn't appear in court because just a few days prior, the Chesapeake Leopard affair occurred, which was June 22nd, 1807, and so the country was in crisis mode. So Thomas Jefferson, he was claiming executive privileges. There were 4 days of fierce arguing, and John Marshall gave the ruling that Aaron Burr had a right to this document because the Constitution guaranteed the right to a speedy and public trial. That meant that the accused should have the opportunity to prepare for his defense. This trial dragged on through the spring and summer months, and quite honestly, the government's case was pretty unorganized. Like, they were grasping at anything and everything that they can grab, get their hands on, whether it be witnesses or just anything that Chief Justice Marshall found irrelevant to the case. And even Luther Martin called this case the will o' the wisp treason, here, there, and everywhere, yet nowhere at all. Ultimately, the jury found Aaron Burr not guilty based off the evidence presented to them, so they were really reluctant to give that verdict. I will add that when General James Wilkinson, the top witness of the government side, presented a copy of the cipher letter he sent to President Thomas Jefferson talking about Aaron Burr's scheme of conquering the Western Territory, it was found to be doctored up because pieces that suggested or revealed James Wilkinson's part in the whole scheme were taken out. Luther Martin huffed, "We take no extracts," and then on the prosecutor's side, William Wirt chimed in or correct, "Unless it be from the molasses."